So this is a story of how TikTok sent me across the country for a yellow 1980 Volkswagen pickup. That one, right there. So I had kicked and screamed and fought the idea of being on TikTok. I thought TikTok was not a terrible thing, but it wasn't the platform that I wanted to start with. I really wanted to start here on YouTube, but my videos were getting absolutely no traction. I was talking to my renters about this, and they said, try TikTok. I know you don't like it, but give it a shot. Give it a chance, and you might actually be surprised. So I said, I guess I'll give it a shot. And one of my first few videos was the video that got this whole thing started. I cannot believe what I just found. It's an early 80s Volkswagen Rabbit pickup 2 miles from my shop on some little dusty back road. I left a note on the windshield, and that was the whole that was literally the whole video. I left a note, and I left, and it said, if you want to sell this, please call me. Here's my phone number. That was the whole video. And that video got about 2 million views in 4 days. Now, later that day, the video was doing great. I was thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. People were ultra supportive, right off the bat. It was such a great experience. And then later that day, after I posted that initial TikTok, I think it was a Thursday morning I posted that video. Later that Thursday, I got a message on Instagram from my good friend, Derek Ripley. He said, fly out to Washington, I'll get you from the airport, we'll go back to my dad's place, and there are a couple caddies on the property. He said, I already know which one you're gonna want. And I said, okay, great. Well, before you say anything else, send me a photo of the truck so I can see what we're up against. And he sent me this photo of this 1980 Volkswagen pickup. And I thought, oh my God, screw the one that I stopped about. This thing is absolutely perfect. It has the Pacific Northwest patina, and the truck is as solid as it could be, but it looks amazing. So I was sold from the very first photo that I saw of that truck. And I thought, I have to do it. I have to make the trip. This has to happen. So I spent the rest of that evening talking to Derek about the trip and sort of the logistics. And he said, the truck needs an engine. He said, that's why it was parked. That's why it's here on the property just sitting. He said, it needs an engine and more than likely a transmission as well. And I said, okay, I will find one. So the next day, I stopped back past the guy's place that had the 1982 pickup that's close to me here in Ohio. And I actually found the guy out front and ended up talking to him for like 3 hours about the pickup and about this and that. And I mentioned to him that there was this truck in Washington that I'm thinking about going out to get. Now, this was very early in this whole plan of this crazy trip. He said, nah, that'd be a wild trip, but the truck that I have is not for sale. So I left that day thinking, you know what? This is meant to be. This yellow truck in Washington is going to be mine. So after I left that guy's place, I came back here to my shop and shot a second TikTok where I talked about where we are with the note left on the pickup here close to me. And I said, you know what? I had a friend reach out yesterday on Instagram, and he said he has a caddy hookup. And it would be one hell of a story for you guys here on TikTok and YouTube. The people went crazy. That video probably has 250,000 views, but hundreds and hundreds of comments from people saying, you have to go. You have to do it. This trip would be absolutely life-changing. This would be an unbelievable adventure. You fly out, rehab this truck, and drive it home 2,400 miles. So the next step was, how do I fund it? How do I make this make sense for me? I didn't have enough money for the trip. I figured it'd be about $5,000 said and done. So I got shirts made and stickers. And I sold that stuff on a website that I built the night prior. So all along, I'm making TikToks about my other cars and my shop here in Ohio. And I mentioned that it's going to be an amazing adventure for you guys to follow along with. And I have shirts and stickers that I have to sell. And that money will directly fund the trip out west. Fly out, drive home, right? So a week later, I had sold 500 bucks worth of stuff and I was completely upside down on the merch. I had spent $2,000 on this merch. I bought 100 shirts and 750 stickers. And I thought, this is bad. This is just so bad. But at the same time, I had to make the content, right? I had to go out there and at least try to get this thing home. So my last hope was another credit card. And I thought, well, this is my trip. This credit card will get me there and it just might get me home. I had enough cash to buy the truck and the parts, but the credit card would get me there and get me back. At least I thought. That was my plan, I guess. So I bought a ticket, and the day after I bought the ticket, I made a post on Instagram about this trip saying, I have this trip planned. I'm getting a 1980 Volkswagen pickup. It's in a field. It's been sitting for at least 20 years. It's going to be an insane trip. And as soon as I posted that, I heard from a writer from Haggerty, Jack Baruth. And he said, hey, we know your fundraiser isn't really doing what you hoped. So shoot me an email on Monday and we'll write you a story about the trip. And hopefully that will give your site a little kick in the pants as far as orders go, and maybe you'll be able to fund the trip after all. I thought, oh my God, this is my big break. Haggerty wants to do a story on the pickup. I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. I flew out to Washington that Friday, September 3rd, and the article went live Tuesday before I flew out. Although the money wasn't quite there, I had a credit card to fall back on, and Haggerty had posted about my trip with a beautiful article written by my friend Nick. It was such a cool thing, and even though I hadn't left for the trip yet, I was so happy that it had become this big deal, that Haggerty wanted to cover the trip, and unbelievable. So I was just so excited right from the get. So Friday rolls around and I am a train wreck. I hadn't gone to the bank yet. My flight left at noon. I'm sort of semi-vlogging with my phone, here I am in the shop. I need these things, I'm forgetting things, and I'm a mess. Woo! Man, it is 7:30 in the morning. I've got to mail a few more stickers out to people who bought them for the trip, and then I am flying out today. It is Friday, September 3rd, and my plane leaves in 3 hours. So I have a bunch of running around to do, and then it's go time. And I am so excited, I'm so anxious, but this is gonna be a wild trip. So I finally get to the airport, right? And I have, the first half of my flight is to Dallas, Fort Worth. And then from Dallas, Fort Worth is the last half of the trip to Seattle. And that's where I flew in. So I finally land in Seattle after an 8-hour day of traveling. I'm tired, I'm beat. And I saunter through baggage claim, find my bag, and then I shuffle outside to passenger pickup. And at this point I'm thinking, wouldn't it be funny if Derek just didn't show up? Now keep in mind, I hadn't met Derek yet. I have never met Derek up until this point. And I'm like, what if he's just been blowing smoke this entire time? Sure, the truck might exist, but the trip, he's thinking, this guy's an idiot. So as soon as I have that thought that wouldn't it be funny if he just didn't show up, I hear the rattle of a 1.5 diesel. And I look, and here comes Derek in his Lago Blue 1982 Rabbit pickup. I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. So he comes around and I throw my bags in the back of the truck and I hop in And Derek and I are instant friends. He is the best guy, the nicest, most helpful person you could ever want to meet. And I felt like 10,000 pounds had been lifted off of my chest. I talked to Derek a couple times on the phone, but you never know, right? So we're there in the pickup. We're driving around Seattle. He's showing me everything from Pike's Market to the Space Needle, and it was just an amazing adventure. Now, before I had flown out, I had arranged that there was an engine in Moses Lake. There was an engine and transmission. This was a 1.6 diesel and a 5-speed out of a later Volkswagen pickup. So I thought, okay, if we could arrange this, so on the way back from the airport, we swing through Moses Lake, which is like 3 hours from Seattle. We swing through Moses Lake, pick up the engine and transmission, and then we head back to Zillah, which is where the truck was. So this is like a 5-hour journey after I had flown for 8 hours. So we leave Seattle. Seattle was absolutely amazing. I'd never been before. Beautiful day, beautiful evening. We leave Seattle in the pickup, go get the engine and transmission, and we finally head back to Zillah. It's dark. I think we got back at like 2 o'clock in the morning, their time, which for me was 5 a.m. So you can imagine I am beat. So we went to bed real early Saturday morning, right? And we woke up just a few hours later. I woke up and I looked out the window and there it was. Across the way, kind of across the field, across their driveway anyway, there it was, sitting in a field, the yellow pickup. I put my shoes on, get dressed and kind of stumble outside and stumble down the stairs and saunter out there. And I checked TikTok that morning and I had just passed 50,000 followers. Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday morning. It's like 9 o'clock and I am standing right next to the truck. Are you ready to see this thing? I'm looking at this pickup and thinking, oh my God, it's amazing, but the inside was filthy. The engine obviously wasted. This thing needs everything. Now, before I made the trip out, I had sent probably 7 boxes worth of Rock Auto parts to his house. So everything that we needed was there, or so I thought. So we pull the truck out of the field and push it into the shop and immediately start working. Jack it up, take the wheels off, take the hood off, pull the motor out. We had all that done in probably 40 minutes. And at that point it was like, okay, well, the interior is absolutely disgusting. It has the stick-on cigarette windows and they were both broken. They are still both broken, so they were both kind of open. Now, in Zillah, Washington, you're in the Yakima Valley, and it's extraordinarily dry there. Everywhere you walk, you're kind of in a dust cloud. So this thing had sat in this field for 20 plus years, and there's dirt and stuff blowing in past these windows, and it was filthy. It was absolutely filthy inside, plus the mice. So we pull the seats out, and we're looking around like, oh, that headliner sure looks suspicious, and we drop it. And there was probably 10 pounds of mouse nest above the headliner. It was disgusting. So we clean up everything the best we can and take out the headliner and take off the, it's an LX model truck, so it has an extra bit of insulation behind the front seats. So we pull that out and pull out everything that, everywhere a mouse could be except for the carpet in the dash. We pulled off everything because it was disgusting. So we run to an Indian reservation, and that was probably the only place in town that had 13s. Cash only deal, right? And I have to run across the street to this real greasy pawn shop. I'm like, you guys got an ATM? So I get some cash, pay the guys, go back to his place, and just keep working. And it was kind of that way from Saturday to Monday. To spare you a lot of details, we did a ton of work over the course of 3 days. Retime the engine, replace the clutch, hoses, everything that we could go through, we did. And a big part of that was actually the truck's wiring. That truck is a wiring disaster, partly from the mice, I think, and the other part was just from sitting. The fuse block is a disaster. I think at some point someone tried to hotwire it because a bunch of relays missing and jumpers in their place, and it was not good. It was just kind of bad all the way around. So nothing really worked, and Derek spent a whole day, Sunday, trying to make the lights work. I think it's Sunday night at this point. We take it down the driveway. This is a big deal, right? The first time this truck's moved under its own power in 24 years, right? We spent 2 days, 24 hours collective of work, and we drive this thing down the driveway for the first time in 24 years. The brakes feel like hell. It barely stops. The motor's running kind of weird. It's like, it keeps dying. There's a fuel problem, but we drove that thing down the driveway and back. That was a big moment. That was just insanely exciting. I can't tell you the excitement because at Sunday morning, I was feeling pretty bad about the project because the wiring was so bad. We had one headlight and one marker light. So again, Derek spent the entire day doing the wiring, and then that night we drove it down the driveway. And that was huge, just huge. So we felt better about the project going into Monday morning. So Monday morning rolls around. This is the third day that we're working on this thing, another 12-hour day. We're buttoning up things here and there, put the hood back on, put the seats back in, vacuum it out for the umpteenth time. And it's just like, God, okay, well, here we go. So we get it out on the road for the first time. Again, this is its first real drive on the road in 24 years. The brakes still feel awful. The vacuum pump really isn't working, so the booster isn't doing anything, and the master bleeds off. It was just a cascade of disaster. So we get it out on the road, we drive it around the block, and we come back, and it made it. It did the trip, but it broke down like 3 times. All right, well, we've broken down 3, 4 times. It keeps running out of fuel, so we're gonna limp it back, and I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah. See if she'll start. Come on, baby. Right on. Lights. One of them. Hell yeah. Derek had to go to work that Tuesday, and I really wanted to leave by Wednesday. So I spent Tuesday running around in Derek's Lago Blue truck, went to town, went to the Napa. I bought a fuel pump to try and get some more fuel from the tank to the injection pump, because that's where the issue was. It was either drawing air somewhere or the pump just doesn't have enough guts to pull the fuel past whatever crap was in the tank. So I thought, okay, this little electric pump might help. And it did. We drove it around that night, filled it up with fuel, and it was running great. So Wednesday, mid-morning, I leave. So I make it about 10 miles down the road, and the temp gauge goes right to hot. I don't smell anything, I don't hear anything, the temp gauge shoots right to hot. And I'm like, oh God. So I get it off on the first exit that I can find, and I'm at a gas station. I've gone about 10 miles. I'm already overheating. Coolant hose split. Check it out. It's the back of this hose right here, which is very swollen. I should have done better. That hose is like 15/16 on one end, a 90, and then 5/8 on the other. Good luck finding that in stock. I'm gonna run inside, grab some water, and see if I can limp it over to Napa and maybe get some hose or patch it back together somehow, because I can't drive it like this. We made it to the liquor store, which was maybe half a mile away. It's spewing out water. Oh God. Here's nothing. Again. So I get it there to Napa, and I go inside. I'm like, hey, I am on the way back to Ohio, and my truck just lost a heater hose. And it won't hold any pressure, obviously. It just shoots right back out of the hose. And I said, it's for a 1980 Volkswagen pickup diesel. And he thumbs through the book, and he says, I'm sorry, I don't really have anything in stock. And I said, please let me behind the counter so I can see, so maybe I can find something that might work. And he's like, man, honestly, I don't have anything that's gonna work. And I said, so we go back and forth for 10 minutes. And I finally talk him into letting me behind the counter just so I can take a look at his inventory. Because he was really certain that nothing would work. You know, those specs are odd enough, of course, that he would have nothing in stock. So I go back there and I'm thumbing through his inventory, and I find this weird little hose off of what I later in the part number was for a GM 3.8 V6. And I said, I'll take this. Put it on the counter. And I said, have a good day. So I go back out to the truck and I jam this thing onto the nipple on the head, and I made it work. So I thought, okay, awesome. Fill it up with coolant, back on the road. At this point, the truck's running great. I'm feeling way better about the trip, and I make it about 90 miles. Make it about 90 miles from that Napa, and I'm on the way to Spokane. You know, my destination that night was Missoula. So I'm taking this ramp in the middle of the desert to connect to a different interstate so I can just shoot up north towards Spokane. It starts to lose power. I look in the mirror, smoking white, blue smoke. I'm like, oh God, what's going on? So I downshift to fourth gear, give it some more juice, and it's just struggling. I thought, son of a bitch. Here we go again. Now, we're in the middle of the desert at this point. There's nothing around as far as I can see, and naturally it dies. With my experience from a couple days prior with it dying and running out of fuel, it was doing the exact same thing. So it would smoke, it would misfire, and just fall on its face. But it hadn't done that since the addition of the pump. And it also had a full tank of fuel. Like, I had just filled it up, 90 miles before. So I was thinking, what is the deal with this? This thing should go really far in a tank of fuel. So I'm just beside myself, God, what's wrong with it now? So I get it started again, and I hobble it. I finally found a truck stop. It was running okay, and I pulled off on the truck stop, filled it up with diesel fuel, and think, well, I guess that's how far I can go on a full tank. Even with my electric lift pump, this thing will only go 90 miles on a full tank of fuel because it's just so crudted up in the tank. I should have dropped the tank. I should have known better. I should have taken care of that before I left. But that was just one more thing I didn't want to mess with, and I should have, but whatever. So I hit the road again after that fuel stop, and things are feeling pretty good. It's running great again. I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess it's back on the road. So my plan was to find a Walmart in Spokane. And at that Walmart, I would buy a couple gas cans. So I would keep the tank full at all times, basically. If it did it again, I would just stop, fill my gas cans up with diesel fuel and just keep it full. Because that's the only way that I knew how to keep it running and running well. So every time I stop, I like to do a little leak check just to make sure it's not, losing engine oil or transmission oil or, brake fluid, coolant, whatever. So I pull into this Walmart. There's the Bee Gees' More Than a Woman playing from the front of the Walmart, just kind of carrying through the parking lot. And I was feeling really good too. The truck was still running pretty great. I was feeling really good. And, more than a woman. So I get out of the truck, I'm looking at it like, man, this is gonna be a great trip. And I bend down to do the leak check, and I look under it, and there is oil plastered all down the underside of this truck. It was from the engine bay to the rear bumper. And there was a puddle already under the truck about this big. And I look at that and I thought, oh my God. I'm looking at this puddle and I think, this thing's not gonna make it home. Between the fuel issue and there was a couple more coolant hoses that I hadn't replaced and they felt pretty soft. So between the coolant issue, the questionable radiator, I thought I may have blown the head gasket too after I overheated it so bad after the first 10 miles. I thought, oh my God, this thing's not gonna make it. So I thought it was engine oil, honestly. So I ran my finger through it and smelled it, as you do, and it struck by the smell of high point. I'm like, oh, that's gear oil, ugh. The transmission output flange had started leaking. So there's a seal behind the flange, and apparently that had given up the ghost, somewhere between the truck stop and where I stopped there in Spokane. So it had lost a lot of oil. Like, I did not think it would leak that bad from the axle flange seal, but it was hemorrhaging oil, like really bad. So, and of course, the axle cup had thrown oil everywhere. It was all over the brake booster, all over the transmission itself. So there was just oil everywhere, including down the entire underside of the truck from front to back. This thing is leaking so much high point gear oil out of the transmission that it's not going to make it home. And I could probably have it fixed, but at this point, I'm not so sure that I want to. I think I'd rather just get a U-Haul and trailer it up, because there's a bunch of other issues too. Like that noise. What the hell was that popping noise? The goal of this trip was to get the truck home, not to hurt the truck. If I thought the truck would make it and make it safely, I would have just kept going. But without being able to check the amount of gear oil in the transmission at any given minute, like with a dipstick, I didn't want to push it. So I opted for a very expensive U-Haul. The idea of being stuck somewhere with no way to get home is awful. It is an awful feeling. Like, when your only ride is a 1980 Volkswagen pickup that will go 90 miles on a full tank of fuel, leaks coolant, you have to jump the alternator to make a charge, and then... That thing burned 260 gallons of gasoline between Spokane, Washington, and Columbus, Ohio. It ruined my trip home because it was not the way that I wanted to go, and because of my U-Haul mileage limit, I couldn't go the way that I had mapped out, which took me down through Salt Lake City and Denver and then east back to Ohio. I had to stay north on I-90 to 94 and then cut south through Minneapolis. So at that point, the trip had completely changed. I posted on the Burn All the Mark Ones Facebook page, and most people were very understanding. I'm a young guy by myself. I had just spent the last 3 days rehabbing this truck to drive home. We had done a ton of work. Long days back to back to back. And here I am in Spokane with a truck that's just not gonna make the drive home. I could stop and keep oil in it, but I just don't know how much is actually in it. I can't stop and check it with a dipstick. When I got the truck home, I drained the oil out of the transmission and there was a third of a quart. So that told me how much it actually lost. And I hadn't been that far, and those transmissions only hold 2 quarts. So I had a third of a quart left. So that told me that if I had pushed it further, I would have torched a gear set or all the gears. And in that case, I would have called AAA and had to have gotten a U-Haul anyway. So it's not the ending to this trip that I wanted at all. If I had bought the truck running and driving, I would have been a lot more understanding and forgiving. But since we had spent 3 days back to back to back rehabbing this truck for the drive home, the last thing that I wanted to do was drop the transmission or pull the axles back out so I could change the seals. I didn't want to spend an extra day in Missoula or Spokane or wherever I was at the time. It was just, I wanted to get home. So I called my buddy Nick, who had written the initial Haggerty article, and we were talking on the phone on the way back. I think I was somewhere in Montana, and we were talking about the trip, and he said, "Dude, what are you saying? Like, the trip was an absolute success." And he said, "You did it. You flew out, Derek got you from the airport, you guys got the engine and transmission, and you guys swapped it in a couple days and rehabbed a truck that had been sitting for 24 years. And you drove it 200 miles. You know, it may not have made the drive home, but you have the truck, it runs and drives, and you pulled it out of a field 4 days ago. That is a win." And I stopped to think about that some more. He was right. The trip was an absolute success, and honestly, this trip had become way less about that truck and way more about the people, Derek's family and Derek himself, because if it wasn't for them, it would have been over so much sooner than that Wednesday night in the Spokane Walmart parking lot. You know, prior to the breakdowns, the trip was an absolute unbelievable success. So, did I drive it home? Not really. But I have the truck and I have a lot of plans moving forward, including a BEW TDI swap, fresh suspension that it desperately needs. And I just want to drive it. I just want to enjoy it. I just want to appreciate it for the truck that it is. It is a very original 1980 Volkswagen Rabbit pickup in sunbright yellow. It's a one-off year. 80 was the only year that the pickups looked like that or had that front end. And it is spectacular. I just want to say thank you, because if it wasn't for you guys and the immense support from Derek and his family, this trip never, ever would have been possible. Finally.